You, Todd.
Okay, so Office 365 FastTrack. This is about how we get customers to onboard and experience the process, the process to onboard and experience the service as fast as possible, okay? And so we talked about streamlining the opportunity to get the sales motion moving forward. There's also, that is in conjunction with streamlining the engineering and streamlining the experience for doing onboarding our customers all at the same time. So this is kind of one big effort that we have driving forward. One of the ways I like to think about this is when we look at how customers transform and run their business, there is a certain amount of, I'm going to skip this little marketing slide here. There is a certain amount of methodology rethink that has to happen, okay? So we all know how the constant, or over time, the traditional deployment methodology has worked out. You go through kind of the pre-deployment, we call it pre-deployment, plan, prepare, migrate, and then the post-deployment efforts that take place. And while that works great in an on-premises environment, it's not really the same logic that you would think about in driving and moving to the cloud. There is a better way, there is a faster way, there is a new way that customers have been more willing to adopt in driving to the cloud. One of the reasons is that we're seeing, and actually this is understated, by the way, but you don't get to the cloud like you would get to an on-premises deployment. You get there a little differently. It's a service. The service has different entry points. And so what we did and what we looked at is, does this really make sense to take customers to the cloud in the same order? Is there a different way that customers would get here and then start moving forward? And so I mentioned earlier the whole concept of standing up a deployment for a pilot and then throwing it away doesn't make a whole lot of sense in managing and trialing that. And so we did a rethink probably about 18 months ago about what's the velocity in getting our customers to the cloud. We can't really afford to have customers experiencing their first mailbox 10 months or 15 months after they said, yes, I'd like to go, especially when they'd be used to getting in there in like about 2 to 3 weeks. And so we started seeing customers being willing to adopt and move in a much faster motion. And so the traditional deployment methodology, we kind of rethought this through a little bit. And one of the ways that I'd like to just talk about, giving you kind of I call this a very simplistic movie that we could play here on what does it mean to move forward into the cloud in this new methodology. We'll play this little video, and then we'll talk about it in a little bit more detail. So I think I have to go out and then push the button. So come up here.
Office 365 is where Office meets the cloud. You get the full Office that you know across any device with all the files backed up and ready to go. Best of all, no more scary deployments. It's a snap. Just 3 steps and you're up and running. Step 1. Start your Office 365 pilot. Within hours, you'll have the complete service at your fingertips. You can send email, store, sync, and share docs, run online meetings, and much more. Step 2. Roll out Office 365 to everyone. All the accounts and information created during the pilot are saved, so you can blaze forward and ditch the downtime. Now everyone has the powerful tools in Office 365. Step 3 is an option for people who want to extend and customize their service if and when they're ready. And that's it. No more scary deployments. With Office 365, you have your complete Office in the cloud in a matter of hours. Stop worrying about deployment and start exploring the new way to work with Office 365. Interested? Let's get to work.
Awesome. So I think I can roll that one forward one. There we go. So one of the things that you saw in the video is a 3-step process. So that 3-step process is something we thought a lot about. We did a kind of a reset. We were actually deploying customers before they actually bought the service. So it seems a little backwards, doesn't it? So we wanted to get to a point where we take advantage of the infrastructure and reorder the bits a little bit. And so step one is really about getting the customers using the product as fast as possible. That's the test drive. Step two, getting your entire family in the car, right? That's now in the test drive, get everybody in. Let them check out and see the features and the capabilities and interact with it. And then step three, do the customizations necessary for that organization that aren't included in step one and step two to really make that their own and drive it forward with velocity inside the organization. Now, some engineering changes have happened, okay? So one, we have now created a means by which you can create a trial that doesn't have to get thrown away and can roll into production, okay? So that's not something that we've had in the past that we now have that we can do as we move forward. So that's something significant and something that customers have constantly been worried about, like, well, what I do here is, am I going to be able to kind of carry it forward? The answer to that is yes. Number two, full Office 365 user experience with minimal on-premises requirements. This is something I feel really good about and actually really confident when we go in to compete with our competitors, but that we can actually showcase more capabilities head-to-head with less IT requirements than our competition. And so if you're looking to, if you hear at any time, you know what, Google's just so much faster at getting me up and running, the answer to that should be, no, it's not. Let me show you, okay? And it shouldn't take a technology person to go and make that happen. Everyone in this room should be able to demonstrate step one, okay? So we're going to make it that easy that getting a tenant up and running, adding a user, and then showing the user the capabilities and features and functions that exist, anybody can do. The third piece in here is the time to value versus the effort invested. Being able to showcase all the capabilities of Office 365, calendar delegation, being able to create a meeting, have that meeting be a link conference meeting, getting the phone engaged into the experience are all parts of the value that you can present in a matter of hours rather than a matter of weeks, okay? And then the last 2 points here are multiple data migration methods. You get a new mailbox. Mailbox is up and created. You can do self-service as well as IT managed into the environment. And so that's we have multiple paths to be able to go through getting the customer data from where they are today to in the cloud and moving forward. We saw in many cases, one of them was a big loss that I was engaged in, where I saw the customer was a bank. Bank was in Spain, and we were sitting there trying to figure out, okay, how would we propose getting this deployment, blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, the competition came in and the customer said, you know what, I don't care about deployment, or I don't care about migration. I have no migration needs. I want everybody to start in the cloud, move forward. Migration will be something that we'll just use as an offline archive. So that started the thinking, gosh, we cannot lose like this ever again. We need to be more flexible and provide the customer the right solution for what they want to see as they go forward. So we started to get a little bit more creative and thinking, you know what, in that trial experience, we can get them up and running. We would have never been beyond step two, the customer would fully be deployed and up and running. So those are the kinds of mindsets, I think, as we started to look at what does a traditional deployment look like on-prem versus a cloud deployment where there's options to take the customer through. I think, Brian, you may want to, did you have something you wanted to add to the migration path? Or?
I think that your is that it was this.
Sorry, Brian's my partner in crime on the...
Yeah, so a lot of you, we've spent quite a bit of time this week on this, and earlier you saw kind of the technical details, but I think this is a good point to pull back and say, make sure we are showing the product, and we have to be wise about, it's very easy to get started, and we can't allow ourselves to say, hey, well, let's go in and have a discussion about how I could integrate, how I could remediate things. Oh, here's all the bad things. Let's focus in on what the service can do. Make sure that always gets presented to the customer first of, hey, you can do these things quickly. And very much a lot of the guidance we went back and looked at here was, getting more specific of, here's the things you need to consider. You still start quickly. There's just a couple things to keep in mind, like how you name your tenant, how you name your users, and then we can help you make a smooth transition. So very much to the point, I think we talked about it earlier, of we used to say just go run a trial, and it was kind of throwaway. We want people to think of, hey, how can I do a pilot with just a couple guiding principles, make sure that that organization starts and puts the first 50, 100 users up on with just net new mailboxes, that if they do make the decision, hey, I do want to migrate, I do want to move to directory sync, that in the future we're able to make sure that's a smooth transition. Users who created data, put it into SkyDrive Pro, are going to have a good transition experience. We don't force them to start over. So start quickly, show the features, and help them make the transition.
And one of the things that we see that happens when you go down this path is that customers will reprioritize potentially what their needs and what's important to them. If I came to a customer and said, you know what, I can get 10,000 users up and running so that they have email, calendar sharing, et cetera, like within a week, versus we could spend maybe 5 or 6 weeks trying to clean up your Active Directory and doing a complete single sign-on. I can give you same sign-on within like, really short time frame. Is that something you'd like to do? And so you're helping guide the customer on reprioritizing that value to time that they want to spend. And so in many cases, it becomes a value discussion, which doesn't translate into I want to do everything all at once, and then I'm going to push the value back, which has been the traditional IT-focused deployment method, which is why we see a lot of business units not going down that path and trying to get to the value faster. This is a great response to that. And so things like cloud IDs with synchronized IDs and synchronized passwords become good enough for the customer initially to get them past their road, to get them past any blockers to using the product, and then you can come back in later if you want to do, federated sign-in, et cetera. And so this is something that, just some of the benefits, there's many, many more, but I think the idea behind this is that going from that step one experience and getting the customers to use it helps the buying decision process to happen faster, which then helps the adoption of the technology to happen faster, which then allows you to prioritize layering in where are those longer term projects going to get prioritized, or how will they layer in later on. Any questions up till so far? This is a pretty, to me, it seems like a aha moment, or Dr. Obvious here, but for the longest time, we were looking at the cloud and trying to do the most complex things first to clear them out, and our customers weren't appreciating them, right? I went to a couple customers and I said, can you show me what your single sign-on experience is? And it just meant that they were logging in multiple times using the same password. Well, heck, we can do that. We don't need federation or don't need ADFS to make that experience work. And so just looking at that helped us reprioritize how do customers really get to the cloud in a way that is acceptable for them, and at the same time clears off the cloud principles and move them through the sales motion and sales process much faster. None yet? All right, so we'll roll into a double click on this. And so you hear about this, we'll use this term, first use in hours, onboarding in days. Being able to take advantage of SharePoint, Exchange, Link Online, Office 365 Pro Plus, and Windows Azure Active Directory services, and soon, I will pre-announce, but I won't commit to any time frame, Yammer, right? So Yammer is also a cloud service, and we're looking at making sure that as many of these workloads as possible will roll in to this exact deployment methodology, where we pilot, get the customer up and running on a tenant. They have the full Office 365 service capabilities to them in a matter of hours. We persist that deployment into user-led migration if they want to go forward. And so we've got some ideas around what you get. You get the service, you get the capabilities, you can now show the mobile device integration, you can show the web apps integration, you can show how the clients would interact with one another in a cloud environment, which is extremely powerful. Customer can actually be using this in a vanity domain, so they're not in real quote-unquote production, but they can actually connect to their production environment, grab up some mail to see what that would look like, and begin to play around. And we do all of that without any IT engagement. That's huge. If you want to do this with Google, you got to go to IT, prove that you own a domain, because there's no vanity domain concept yet. And so you'll have to either do that by changing your DNS, that goes through some process, or you got to drop a file on your web server to prove that you own that domain. Doing those types of activities take time. This takes a matter of minutes to just stand up a tenant, add a user, and now you're able to experience and start walking customer through what that would look like. I liken this to, how many people here have ever seen the MEC, right? We call it the MEC in the US. It's the Microsoft Experience Center. No one, okay? You will have maybe one or two. You'll have a great session later this afternoon on what the capabilities are. But we want to drive customer experiences here. Every customer that I've heard that's gone through this Microsoft Experience Center, they love it They think their eyes start opening up. They start getting ideas about how they could use the technology to solve business problems within their own organization. However, number one complaint that they all walk away with is, I wish I could take it home with me. I wish I could take it back to my customer. So you have the opportunity in this pilot process to actually build that Microsoft experience and then let the customer keep playing with it, right? There's nothing to take home. They can just log in. So that's awesome. The second point is around the deploy. So deploy, simply in this matter, means taking the vanity domain and turning it into the real domain so that now their mail is being pumped through this environment, et cetera. And so we do this, and we enable things like shared namespace. We can do simple coexistence. We can do external sites, et cetera. But what's really important here, I'll just level it up one, is that this 3-step process enables us to think about where we would make some investments around helping customers get onboarded faster, helping customers get into that environment. And so we looked at this process. It actually helps our engineering team out quite a bit, because what they did is they went and prioritized Exchange 2010 SP3, and by having a customer on Exchange 2010 SP3, they can actually do coexistence in step 2, which was prior to this only available via an extended development, or extended offering. And so we're actually starting to move capabilities and features from what used to be really complex, require a lot of effort, up forward in the stack. And so you'll see over time more capabilities available to you in the pilot, more capabilities available to you in step 2, and then new capabilities or things that you may want to do integration with in the step 3 environment as well. And so we've got kind of the how. We have the pilot plus. We end up doing what's called IT-led migration. Customer domain gets created. We do a dir sync. We do a password sync. We do some administrative migrations and using the on-ramp tools. And what's nice about this is this gives you that same sign-on experience. And so the customer can now log in with the same password and roll forward, basically. And if that's all they need, they're done, right? Now you can work on how do you customize that environment for the customer to take all the best benefits from the cloud moving forward. If they need extend, and so there'll be customers that need to be able to go through some extended capabilities, which is the SharePoint hybrid, the link hybrid, the federated identity, et cetera. Those, what we're seeing partners do is package up offerings like, to be able to take a deploy plus a feature and then package that up for certain costs and then go drive that out. And so that's becoming a best practice as we roll forward. Did you have any?
Yeah, the only thing I actually step back to deploy for a minute. And
Yep.
a lot of this is some of the stuff you probably are already doing. And you hit on this that, it's also us then going back and saying, well, what are the engineering changes we need to invest in to actually make this real? And so some of those investments, it's creating a password sync tool. We kept hearing, hey, it'd be good enough if I just had the same user ID and password. So that gets made available here. The on-ramp tool itself, getting better at helping you kind of drive and be successful and more quickly getting the deployment done. So the on-ramp tool itself takes in the inputs from, hey, here's where the customer wants to go, but it actually it's a systematic check to say, hey, you're doing the deployment. As you go through, let's throughout the phase, continue to check, did you get it right? And make sure it really helps you speed up that deployment because you don't get 10 steps down and then realize, why is it not working? And you spend lots of time troubleshooting, but rather it's kind of an iterative process of, hey, take care of the first setups, i.e. set up the domain, set up the shared namespace, and let's go check that. Let's make sure that's done. So we're giving you a toolkit to help you, hey, here's kind of the flight plan you need to go do, and as you make it through all the checkpoints, we're going to help you validate, not just with guidance, but rather systematic checks. And then, the other big investment in this was the number one kind of slowdown item that we saw was Active Directory remediation. I know this takes a lot of time. It used to be, we could tell you things were wrong, and then it was up to you to help the customer clean that up. And so the new tool that's made available is called ID Fix. And the ID Fix tool, one, will identify where there's a disconnect of, hey, they have characters that aren't supported in Windows Azure Active Directory, wrong UPNs, but it goes a step further and says, well, here's our recommended fix, and literally just click the button and it'll go script it and fix it for the the customer and has the ability to roll back, et cetera.
So needless to say, I mean, this approach is being widely adopted, not just from a sales and deployment and onboarding approach, but it's also having huge impact on our engineering teams. We had this thing at Microsoft called the One List, right? So it was this idea that Kevin Turner had, which was, I keep hearing things that need to be fixed. Create me one list so that I can go out and start to prioritize them. And so that one list really created a tool called One List. It's kind of crazy. So it came off as I want one list and being able to see this. That one list became one big list, okay? And so the engineering teams would look at this list and go, gosh, where do I start? How do I know if I make this change, it's going to have the biggest impact? And so this becomes a great way for us to start to see, hey, how many customers get through the pilot successfully? How many customers get through deploy successfully? How many customers need this extend thing? And when we can figure out some of those extend capabilities, if we just fix this and we can move the deployment up faster, will that drive adoption quicker? And so it allows us to take a look at these items and then look at this and say, you know what? Because I remember going to Brian saying, if we don't have password sync, customers aren't going to do this. And so they went, okay, we'll invest in password sync and make that happen. And so over time, you will see further investment. And the idea would be, you can do a lot of things in this step too. We don't want to spend a whole lot of time on deploy if we don't have to, right? Rather spend more time figuring out how to drive use, right? They'd be able to usage of the products. Because that's where the business value happens, is when the customer is then taking advantage of the technology and using it to their benefit. Like in the Starbucks example I gave earlier. They didn't want to spend a whole lot of time figuring out how to remediate their directory and moving that forward. They want to spend more time on what can I customize what can I configure in the environment to make it more appealing for the users to be able to interact with the service and provide data back to corporate so they can figure out what are the business challenges that we can resolve from store to store. So the idea here is to kind of minimize the deployments, speed them up, and speed up the adoption so that the velocity happens even faster, right?
Yeah, I think that's, from an opportunity perspective, really think of that. Like, we want to help everybody make the onboarding process as quick and, be able to use the service as quickly as possible, and really shift the focus onto let's see how we can help you get more done more quickly.
So just before you go, I want Todd to keep talking about this. Does anybody in the room know if your company is a cloud deployment partner, is in the cloud deployment partner program? Okay, so there were maybe half a dozen hands there. So I'd like to give you some money. What do you think? Really, I'd like to give you some money.
It's like
so
an E-Trade commercial.
Those of you who are currently cloud deployment partners, we have an offer for you that's only good for the rest of this fiscal year, and it's on this pilot, on this step one that Todd's going to tell you more about, which is we'll give you $3,000. And remember, Todd says this is an effort in hours, right? So if it's a day or two, this is a really good rate, right? So we'll give you $3,000 to execute one of these pilots with a CAM-S or CTM customer, 10 users. It doesn't have to be, hundreds or some crazy thing. And then you just have to commit to doing it, and you have to send us an invoice by the end of the fiscal year, and then you have to commit sometime in the next month the subsequent month or two to having a conversation with the BG team to talk about, did it work, how did it work, what would you change? So if you're interested in that, send me an email. It's steve.looper@microsoft.com. We have a limited number of those available. If you're not sure, if you're a cloud deployment partner, and I'm going to talk about this after lunch, if you're not sure, you can also email me. There's about 100 in the U.S., and I can tell you whether or not you are. Email me the name of your partner if you're not sure, and I can check that while Todd's continuing. But I want to give you money, right? $3K, and we got to use it by the end of our fiscal year. So I'll let Todd keep telling you about it, but it's for this number one, and it's only for the next 7 weeks. So.
I feel like Jimmy Fallon. Who doesn't like money? So like that commercial where he goes through that process with the little baby. But I think that it's a great offering. $3,000 to go out and stand up a pilot for the customer that takes probably about anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour to go through. well worth the investment, especially being able to have the customer engagement to then talk about step 2, step 3, and at the same time, provide Brian and team great input on what else needs to happen in that pilot. What can we do to make that thing as rich as possible to drive even more customer adoption? So we talk about the pilot experience. I'm not going to read all the stuff on the slide, but the idea here is on day 1, full use of the service. You should be able to get full use of the service within a day, okay? And be able to walk out to the customer and show them how to log in, show them mail, the collaboration, the clients, the mobile, and the administration capabilities of the product. So from this standpoint, we would move into what's required. So what do you need to connect? You need a network, you need to get mail, you need some clients. The clients could be a browser, the clients could be the rich client. The browser is going to be a minimum web client browser is IE8, okay? And the client is going to be Windows 7 Plus, and if they're on Windows 7 Plus, we can install Office 365 Pro Plus. What's great about Office 365 Pro Plus? Up and running in about how long? If you're on a typical network, cable network, etc., you're up and running in about maybe 4 or 5 minutes to the first client. It's been pretty reasonable time. And then when you're done, if they say, you know what, what if I don't want it on my machine? Click uninstall. No footprint. So very great experience to be able to showcase this off. So simple requirements, easy from start to stop. Second piece, if they ask, well, what about deploying? We go, great. We can actually start doing that. If you like what you see, we can do this in a matter of days. And so from the days standpoint, we add some on-premises integration. We could do pilot, some additional users, and the information that they put into the pilot gets sustained and moves forward into their production environment. We can then bring in some other stakeholders and start talking about, hey, maybe we want to get a little small department up and running and migrate their data and drive some more adoption and usage of the product more deeply. And so here you have some of the capabilities, if they have from Exchange 2010, from Exchange 2007, 2003, and then some of the other capabilities if they're just moving from some other choices and moving in from their mail standpoint. We tend to elaborate more on the collaboration, drive some more of the IT managed capabilities around the clients, manage mobility connectivity, and more monitoring and administration control. And then the last piece here is what's required to make this happen. And so we get into what are the identity, network, and mail requirements and the client requirements to get the customer past this point. It's a great conversation. Probably should happen in conjunction so that the customer's piloting and then realizing at the same time that step 2 is not like this drawn out 40-week long process. And then we can talk about step 3 and what's being added. Now here's the great thing. This is an opportunity for your organizations, if you're an SI, package this stuff up. Figure out fixed offerings for subsets of customers to be able to drive the usage, and then with the mindset that this will be a rolling deployment or a rolling adoption that you can drive. And so we're going to be adding more scenarios. It creates more usage. It creates more deeper integration, which is, of course, some great SI work that can go in. But if you order it like this, you'll find that the longevity and the usage of the product goes up, and then the customer adoption goes up at the same time. There is a great resource that I'll actually have Brian talk about it because I think he's launching the site back on his notebook. So.
Yes, something like that. So wouldn't just call the kind of call to action to go consume and actually interact with this data, the slides we just covered. The site will be going live within a week, fasttrack.office.com. So that's the thing to brand in your brain, so go check that out. It'll be launching soon, so a lot of the content and the constructs we talked about, and from what Steve talked about, from a partner perspective, we want you to start doing it. We want the feedback. So if you can participate in those programs, even if you just consume the content, we want to hear from you.
Brian, what's our tech? We have some TechNet content ready to go right now. It's like deploy.
So if you were I'll call it the beta version of this is currently on our TechNet platform at deployoffice365.com, and so that is we actually launched that back with the GA of the service back in early March. So if you look at that, you can see the construct of how we're evolving from here's the constructs of what a pilot is, what is really in deploy, and a lot of this stuff is, okay, now what's becoming real is password sync, improved on-ramp, and we can get more and more things earlier in process, give more value right up front. And that's a good point to hit on, is that we'll continue to evolve this. Our goals, what we're committing to, is that quarterly refresh of, hey, what does it mean to do a pilot? What does it mean to do standard deployment? And so it'll be, as service evolve, we're in a much different spot than we have been in the past, where we can get new features kind of throughout the years, rather than waiting for an entire wave to ship 3 years later before we can do something else. So it's important to know that, hey, through the channels, we'll continue to communicate. Here's what's changing throughout, and not waiting multi years to make those changes.
Any questions so far? Does this sound like a program that you guys would probably take advantage of? See some nodding heads. Great. Would hope that each and every one of you would at least walk into a customer, talk to them about how fast and easy it is to get onto the cloud with Microsoft, and then get a pilot up and running with that customer, and walk them through. And if you need help with this, we actually can provide you with some step-by-step guidance, so you can just walk yourself through this when you set up your own trial tenant. So it's not that hard, okay? I have our president of North American sales. Actually, we're going to videotape her. Actually, worldwide sales. We're going to videotape her doing this. She's like, I want to be able to demo this myself. We're like, great. So this is something that anyone within an organization should feel confident that you can demonstrate what the value and the capabilities are. And we'll have some great tools and videos to kind of walk you through step by step to prepare you before you go out in front of the customer. And you may find that the customer might already be trialing it themselves, and get them to go from step 1 to step 2 would be even better. We'd love to talk to you, also provide some great feedback on what would some of the package offerings that you might want to create look like, based on some feedback. So that would be some good feedback as well on how would you be thinking about step 2 and step 3 offerings to present in front of the customers, and are there things missing that we should be adding or making sure that we make some investments in as we go forward. And I think...
So we won't cover all these today, but as takeaway resources, we've included the things I was mentioning about the tools themselves right here. Refer back to the Ignite sessions we did earlier this week. We actually rolled through these and did demos of these. So Alistair will be getting these posted to the Ignite site going forward as well. So
several of the tools that we mentioned around, the ID fix tool, we have what it is, where to go ahead and download it. We talked about what it fixes. So there's some screenshots in there if you want to have this discussion with your customer in the deck. There's also the password sync tool and what that fixes, and then there's password sync security that you can cover the security conversation with your customer. There's the password policies that you can talk about what's capable to ensure the customer is going in eyes wide open. And then lastly, there's some of the scoping options. And so again, we have step-by-step instructions available with the link inside the slide deck. We also have the Exchange 2010 SP3 hybrid environment. So this is an opportunity to go out to your customers, get them up and running on Exchange 2010 SP3 now, so that they can have a really awesome stage 2 experience or step 2 experience, so that they can actually do rich coexistence without even having to do ADFS integration work, which is a huge leap forward from a technology implementation standpoint, allowing the customer to do kind of that free and busy sharing, et cetera. And again, that details here are downloadable. And then lastly, I think that would be it, which would get us to lunch a little bit early, unless we have some questions that we want to ask. I know I covered that kind of quick, but you guys get all these decks. You guys get all of the links. You guys can download the stuff. I'll make myself available at lunch. I think, Brian, you got to take off, right?
Yeah, I need to take off. But if there's questions about this, that's why I was redirecting to the Ignite session where we actually spent time going through each of those tools. So refer back to that as the reference point. And a lot of these tools, as noted there, are available today. So we can go kick the tires, start using these things today. And that last set of things is very much of, hey, it's a sales process change, a deployment process change, and then it's influenced back to us to say, hey, engineering, you got to you got to help us make this real. And so those are kind of the first things that are really panning out of, hey, good feedback, let's actually make it better.
Yep.
So you talked about, Brian, or actually both of you kind of talked about a few places to go, and I know we're going to share this content, and I'll talk about that in a second, but there was the on-ramp site, and now there's the FastTrack site, and what would your guidance be? What's the place for people to go to start consuming and taking advantage?
I would say wait for a FastTrack site.
Yeah.
Next
We're
Thursday it'll launch.
We're going to make the FastTrack site the main site that will branch you off by step of where you need to go for all of the resources. And so they'll be centralized there so that when you get to step 1, there'll be all the features and capabilities that you want to demonstrate in step 1. As you go to step 2, we'll have the tools and the links in step 2. The idea here is to not have to have you branch into like 20, 30 different places to cobble this together, that there's one track, FastTrack, that will get you from point A to the end.
FastTrack will start you in the right spot, and then, as appropriate, deep links you into all the supporting content. And if how many of you know of Mod G? Some people probably.
We haven't given anything away yet this morning. If anybody can define Mod G, I think I'd love to give away something this morning.
What's Mod G? Anyone care to venture a guess?
Wow. It's a sales and pre-sales technical audience. So
all right. So
anybody using Bing on their machine or phone or whatnot? I mean,
who can find?
We'll go look it up.
Mod G is.
I'll even spell it for you, right? MODG.
But and FastTrack also helps address this from just a technical content perspective. We can liken it to, we used to throw you in the room and there's a bunch of papers on the floor and yep, you have lots of options and you sort it out. And FastTrack it helps put order into that and say, hey, here's how to properly consume that. Here's the resources we have, and it is very much our recommended approach. Yes, we have lots of options. Let's put you down the path that help you get done quickly. Yeah.
Give that guy a mouse.
Yeah, Microsoft Online Deployment Guide for Enterprises,
Awesome.
Right?
Who can name for me?
Don't give it all away now. You got to give one of the other ones away there.
Okay.
This is a museum piece, right? I've got a 16 gig Zune HD here. I mean, this.
By the way, still connects to Zune Online.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they still work, and they are great thin devices. Newest member to the Office 365 family.
I think it's the green shirt.
I think it's the guy in the green shirt. He just got you.
We got another Zune. You'll be able to take a Zune back to Hawaii. We'll come up with a way for you to do that. And then, so the other question I had, Todd and Brian, is you showed, and again, we're going to give the links, but you talked about password synchronization, and you talked about ID fix, and are either or both of those something I can go get, right now, or
They are.
They are.
Though, so clarifying. Password sync is the exception to this. It's not yet available. So only through, we're doing some RDP style early testing, but we're on track to deliver that in this half. We'll commit to that.
So in this half, right, means before the end of Microsoft's current fiscal year. So in the next 60 days.
Yeah. And just how it gets delivered, password sync is a feature being added to the directory sync appliance, the directory sync executable. So don't be alarmed. It's not like a net new thing to install. We were mindful of that. Like, hey, we already have this one thing. Let's make sure it can just do all of those and add in a feature to it. The other things we talked about, ID fix. If you web search ID fix and say download, and you'll get to top search link there. It's just available on the download center today, and so you can go start using that today.
And it's hyperlinked in the deck, and you guys will have access to it.
Yeah, we're gonna give you the deck.
And then on-ramp is the other thing. I know some partners had been some early testers on on-ramp, and it's continued. Every month we ship updates in that tool, but we've definitely done a lot of optimization to make it work well with this process. So that one's it's linked in the deck, but if you just go HTTPS onramp.office365.com, and you can immediately start using that. And it actually feeds in well to some of the stuff you guys were talking about. It is a way to help you facilitate some of the CDF processes around SAW and MDD. it also can help facilitate that, along with the way we really look at it in deployment is to help give you that targeted guidance and technical validation. So it's an online tool to do all that.
SAW being a term we use called Solution Alignment Workshop, MDD being a term we use called Microsoft Due Diligence. So
yes, I'm full of acronyms today.
Yeah. No Zune for you.
Yes.
Okay, very good. So we'll get you the deck. I know that you guys are going to be bored on the weekend, so ID fixed. You got to wait for the password sync capability. But FastTrack coming next week. OnRamp something you can take a look at now. Okay, lunch.